We are recording.
Okay, great. Okay, once more onto the breach. Town of New Canaan Affordable Housing Meeting, regular meeting Monday, October 7, 2024. Item number 1, roll call and call to order. John Goodwin, I'm here. Chris Wilson. Here. Bill Perrette. Here. Krista Nielsen, not here yet. She will be here. Jane Williams.
Here.
Hillary Orman.
Here.
Mike Sweeney. Here. Rita Weingart.
Here.
Jeff Williams.
Here.
Super. Okay, item number 2, minutes approval. The minutes of the meeting held on July 8th, 2024.
So moved. Second.
Well, I did want to say any changes to the meeting, but we'll just skip that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. Item number 3, discussion with Habitat for Humanity, Kevin Moore, Carolyn Vermont, Bruce Jackson, Mark Barnhart, Kristen Keel, John Gonski, Rich Townsend, Jane or Jeff. Do either of you guys want to make any introduction?
No, I just want to thank you all for being here. We still are expecting a couple more of your colleagues, but we've had, thanks to Rich, conversations with Habitat about the work that they're doing in other parts of Connecticut, and look forward to having a conversation here tonight. And I think, Rich, you're going to start us off, right?
Yeah. Okay. Just real quick, let the record show that Kristen Nielsen arrived at 7:01. I stated before you're here.
Come on, there we go. Okay, Rich Townsend, 34 White Oak Shade Road. Then get me in here. We're here really, we've thought about doing this for a long time. But the thing that has made it possible for New Canaan to really want to be interested in what Habitat can offer here is thanks to these two guys back here, Mark and Bruce. Habitat has a home ownership strategy for everything they build. They don't rent them. People own them and they become families in them, and they're very successful. And the affordable housing hadn't really been cracked on how to do it with ownership. And get affordable housing credits. Well, Fairfield worked on that and has come up with it, and they currently have 4 under construction, which that's part of this, and 14 more that they've committed to. So they bought into the strategy here, and I think that when you hear the strategy is very good. So that's why we're here. We've been, from a New Canaan standpoint, just how has New Canaan been involved with Habitat? And I will tell you how I know about it. There's probably other people that know more about it than I do. But probably 20 to 15 years ago, St. Mark's had an organization called Bridge Builders. And they were building with Habitat they were building with CFC, Habitat CFC, Coastal Fairfield County. And then about 15 years ago, we got a new pastor at our church, the United Methodist Church in New Canaan. And he had been very active in Habitat across Connecticut. So he became the chairman of Habitat CFC. And he asked me if I would start to coordinate getting some volunteers from New Canaan to come up there. And so I joined with the Bridge Builders. The first thing we worked on was about, I think it was 20 condos, fairly close to Stanford Hospital. And it was quite a project. It took them 2 or 2.5 years to get enough money to put it together. And that illustrates the problems. And the problems really are, how do you get land? And the reason there has not been a lot of building anywhere except in Bridgeport lately is we could still get land at $1 a lot that was held back for taxes. And we would build a house on it. And then it goes back in the tax rolls. You get taxed, you get a good family, move into the house, you improve the neighborhood, and it's all goodness. So that's been a place to really put a lot of effort in. And so the Coastal Fairfield County started business in 1985, I believe. They built just credibility of building a lot of houses, 284 houses. Since then, so roughly 7 to 10 a year, depending on how they came in. And in that time, I believe that they still have, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they're still connected with 191 families that had been in that, because the way Habitat works is once you become a Habitat family, you buy the house, you get support going in, you get support all the way until you leave. And you're really kind of hooked to them because they give you the mortgage. And so it's a big piece of Habitat in coastal Fairfield County is social support for them. When the people are applying to get in, they have to have a job. They have to have enough earnings to be able to afford a house at that point in time. They have to go through budgeting education with the folks from coastal Fairfield. And then once they get knighted that they're going to get a house, they've got to put in somewhere between 250 and 500 hours of sweat equity before they can move into their house. So it's kind of proof of concept that they can deal with a house by the time they get in that house. If you take a look at how long we've been doing it for about 15 years. And what I've coordinated anyways has been, we work one Saturday a month, generally 11 or 12 Saturdays a year, third Saturday of the month in general. And we usually have somewhere between 6 and 10 volunteers. And so we've probably put in 8,600 hours or something since we started. And it's interesting because the volunteers are important in two ways. They're important for the labor, but not so much for the labor. They're important because once they get working on it, they're donors. And all of a sudden they want to give money to this place. And so if you take a look at what our team from New Canaan, and it's not just our church, we pull also from the men's club, as well as the neighborhood that is downstream from the Y. It's very popular there. So there's a lot of people that come from there and work with it. We signed up for $25,000 a year in donations for last year and the subsequent 2 years. And we also have one large giver who would not be surprised to hear is George Bauer, that takes a real interest in this. And he has given 5 and 6 figure numbers to these guys in order to buy land. Because he came to them with the concept that you got to buy land if you want to really build houses. And so he has funded basically 2 plots of land. The first one was 7 houses complete at this point, and the next one is a neighborhood that's going to have 14 houses in it. And that one still needs all of the infrastructure put in, the roads, et cetera. And so that one's going to take a little longer to get going. But so that's why the volunteers are important. And there's really 3 things that I think make this work and why it's worked so well at coastal Fairfield County. And one is we talked about the social stuff, but the real prime thing reports to Kevin, and that's the project managers. Because when you arrive at a site and you've got 4 or 8 or 12, you really need a project manager with unskilled folks like this. You need a project manager for every 4 or 5 people to tell them what to do so that when they do it, you don't have to redo it. And on an awful lot of construction things that you go to, I've been to Appalachia service projects, all of those kind of things, Christmas in July. Volunteers are terrific because of their enthusiasm, but half the time you end up pulling the stuff out the next day and redoing it. And that just doesn't happen with Habitat. And so we've got the project managers that are key. We've got the social aspect of it that's key. And the last part that is really key is collecting money and going out and getting donations. And on that vector, they've been very successful lately. They managed to get entangled with Mackenzie Scott and her foundation. And Mackenzie Scott decided she wanted to give a bunch of money to Habitat because she liked the concept. And I believe there's, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, 1,700 affiliates in the U.S. Is that what?
Yeah, we're gonna.
I'm front running you, huh? I'm sorry. But I think this is important because out of that 1,700, they picked coastal Fairfield County as one of the ones to give millions of dollars to. And I think that's a real pat on the back, and I think it's a good reason. So I'm done introducing. Now I'll go back to the back row.
Yes, I'm Kevin Moore. I'm the Chief Operating Officer with Habitat for Humanity, Coastal Fairfield County. And Bruce, our board chair, is here as well. Mark Barnhart is here from the town of Fairfield. So we're going to be telling you a little bit about what we're doing in partnership with the town, and Kristen Keel. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Let's see. So my name is Kristen Kyle. I'm the Executive Director for the Housatonic Habitat for Humanity, and my board chair is joining us virtually, John Gonski. Do you want us to start the presentation?
Yeah.
I can take it off from
Walk right
there.
into it.
So thank you so much for having us here today so that we can explain our model for Habitat for Humanity. You did a great job leading into it. Covered a lot of our material, actually. No, it's wonderful. It's good. It's great to hear it from a volunteer's perspective. It really is. So Habitat for Humanity is an international organization which is currently operating in over 70 different countries across the world. And there are 1,500 affiliates right here in the United States. And they're really focused around building stronger communities through home ownership. Our vision is that everyone will have a decent place to live. And in Connecticut, if you look on the next slide, I think we're 2 slides in, if you wanted to follow along. And then the next slide, PowerPoint was too large to send, so I had to send it in a PDF version. So there are 7 affiliates in Connecticut, and 2 of us are currently operating inside Fairfield County. That includes Coastal and Housatonic Habitat. And essentially our Habitat home model is the same for all of our affiliates in the United States. We sell homes based on what the homeowner can afford. And then that what the mortgage that they can afford, the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance is not going to be more than a certain percentage of their income. And the difference between the mortgage amount that the homeowner can afford and what the property is actually valued at, that becomes a silent second mortgage. That's basically just to protect our interest in the property. And we also have a right of first refusal on our houses, which is to say, if and when that house needs to be sold, we'll have the option to keep it in our affordable home portfolio by buying that property back and giving it to another Habitat family. So that's a lot of the things that we have in common. To tell you a little bit about how we separate. So that is the model of our, in Connecticut, the 7 different affiliates. And then Housatonic Habitat, we were founded in 1991. So we've been around for 33 years. We were founded by 4 different religious organizations. And over that time, we've been building homes. We've built in Danbury, Newtown, Bethel, Brookfield, Washington, and New Preston, which is a small subset of Washington. Our typical families are going to make between 30 and 80% of the area median income. And we do have all of our homeowners partner with us to complete at least 250 hours of sweat equity, which does include 50 hours of financial literacy training. This way, when they actually become homeowners, they're prepared for the financial responsibilities that come with owning your own home. And we work with them even after they become homeowners for years and years to come. If they have a problem, they come back to us, we continue to counsel them. As you said, they never really leave us. They're part of our family, and we're there to help and support them through their entire journey of home ownership. The next slide, you should be able to see our service area. So the Housatonic Habitat for Humanity, our service area includes 13 towns on the western part of Connecticut, as high up as Washington and New Milford, and it comes down and including New Canaan. And in our service area, we not only build homes, but we also repair blighted properties. You can switch to the next slide. You can see some of the houses that we're building right now. And so we'll build new homes, we'll repair blighted properties so that they're a safe home for a family to walk into, knowing that they're not necessarily going to have the money to do major home repairs. When a Habitat homeowner comes into the home, the house should be in good shape. They shouldn't have any major things that need to be done. So that wouldn't be a financial burden for them to have to deal with. We also have a very successful aging in place program. This is where we help seniors and veterans who are low income stay in their home longer by making critical home repairs, things like grab bars, anything that you can do to prevent a slip and fall, hand railings down to basements, preventing slips and falls, keeps seniors in their homes, keeps them out of nursing care facilities. We do this in several different ways, but it's mostly through reaching out to our communities. We leverage supplies. We have a very successful restore located in Danbury, so we often get building supplies that are donated to that. We use volunteer labor wherever we can. We also negotiate and have great relationships with our building partners so that we can get the best deal possible on different items that are needed for the build. And of course, we fundraise year-round to support the builds. And my last slide, I thought I would show you a picture of some of the homes that we're building. We have a neighborhood, which was a PUD, a planned unit development, where the original builder had a 13 planned unit development in the works, and he was able to build 5 homes, and those are the pink homes in that are kind of shaded in. Since then, we've built 5 of those homes and sold them to Habitat families. They're the ones with the little for sale signs. We have 1 under contract, ready to be sold in the next couple of months, 1 under construction. And the last home is going to be a handicapped accessible home for one of our families. And they're very nice houses. This model we've chosen to go with is all single family homes with a 1-car attached garage. They're 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath. It is a PUD, so they have a shared community area, basically grass fields, playground areas for the kids. And they're great little houses that we're building up there. These houses are in Washington. So now I'll pass it on to Kevin so that he can talk specifically about coastal.
Yes, thanks for having us tonight. Yeah, our affiliate is very similar to Housatonics in terms of structure. We serve coastal Fairfield County, essentially the communities from Greenwich up to Stratford along the coast and a few inland communities at the north end of our service area. We've built in 4 of these communities to date: Bridgeport, Stamford, Stratford, and Newly in Fairfield. So as Rich said, the United Methodist Church of New Canaan got very involved in our work when we were building in Stamford, 8 townhomes, and they've been an important part of our work to date. And Rich didn't mention it, but he serves on our board of directors. Carolyn. So yeah, we were as an organization, we were founded in 1985. As Rich said, we've built 285 homes. We're somewhat unique in the affordable housing model in that we are both the builder and the lender. So we write the mortgages, we write 0 interest mortgages for home buyers earning between 40 and 70% of the area median income. And we sell the homes based on, as Kristen mentioned, based on the home buyer's ability to pay. So we ensure that the homes don't cost more than 30% of the home buyer's monthly income with taxes and insurance included. So it gives you a general sense of cost. You know, units typically cost us about $220,000 each in terms of hard costs, brick and mortar costs. If you add construction overhead to that, you're probably at about $280,000. And we're typically selling those homes based on the homeowner's ability to pay for around $180,000. So the home buyer is getting a pretty big upfront subsidy, as well as the 30-year interest-free mortgage. But that's what's necessary to keep them affordable for the home buyer long term. So, you know, we're fundraising that differential, and you know, it's very important that we have the support of you know, individuals, corporations, faith groups, municipal grants, and then our existing mortgage payments. We have 191 home buyers in our existing mortgage portfolio, so that all their monthly payments on their mortgages are helping to build and fund the homes we're building now. We also have a very active restore in Stratford, which is an important part of our model. We build a lot of side-by-side 2-family homes, like the ones pictured. This is the majority of what we build these days, because, you know, land is one of our biggest costs. So if we can maximize the number of units on a parcel, obviously that helps us build more homes, serve more families. So the sales structure varies a little bit from community to community, depending on local requirements. But, you know, in some cases, we're selling these with common wall agreements, sometimes as a condo association, specifically in Bridgeport, where most of our building has been, all multifamily homes are required to be sold as condos. But functionally, you know, the side-by-side home with a little offset gives the homeowners a fair amount of privacy, despite the shared common wall. And we kind of structure the home such that we can fence it down the middle, and there's limited common elements for each home buyer. And it lives much like a single-family home, despite being, you know, a side-by-side home. Generally, you know, you stay on your side, I stay on my side, and while we own it all in common, our day-to-day lives can function, you know, side by side. So in 2022, we started in conversations with the town of Fairfield about kind of our shared interest in building some affordable home ownership units in Fairfield. And the town, who Mark's been good enough to join us tonight, was able to identify a first parcel. We responded to an RFP for redevelopment of that site on Greenfield Street. The town had bought a small single-family home, old home, and it was somewhat unique in that there was town-owned undeveloped parkland behind it. So the town was able to tear down the house, add some town-owned property, and put out an RFP for redevelopment for home ownership units. We responded to that. We got that, and we entered a ground lease with the town in March of 2023 for that parcel, and we started building the home ownership units. Called up the volunteers from New Canaan and elsewhere, and you know, in late 2023, we're clearing the site, doing a lot of the groundwork, getting the foundations in, and we started framing the first units. So there's two families on this site. We subdivided a lot, if you will. So there's two side by side, two families, and we started framing them in the beginning of this year. And we're pretty well along. We were hoping to finish those up by the end of the year. We're probably going to be looking more like early 2025 for completion and sale to the home buyers. So essentially, we currently are the leasee for the land from the town of Fairfield, Habitat Coastal Fairfield County. We're going to build the home ownership units, and then we'll sell those to our qualified home buyers with a sublease. And, you know, there's various models to do this, you know, common wall agreements, common interest communities. And it really, what works best probably depends on the property and the needs of the specific community. We're already engaged in a development agreement with the town of Fairfield for our next project. So we'll be hoping to wrap up the first units on Greenfield Street in early 2025. And then the next project is a bigger project. You can go to the next slide if you don't mind. So we've entered a development agreement for what is currently 5 parcels of, it's actually deed restricted town-owned land already, that we'll be building some more higher density relative to the single family homes that are currently on the site. So we're looking at 10 to 14 homes on these 5 parcels. Again, we're currently kind of conceptual because we have to get some zoning approvals from the town. But we're hoping that this is going to be a model that can be replicated, not just in Fairfield, but in similar towns. So that's kind of the top level overview. Which one? Greenfield Street?
Another bigger parcel.
Yeah, so, wait, what is that? Yeah, I think it's maybe an acre altogether. You know, there's 2 parcels that are separate, so those will be 2 family homes on each of those lots, and then we're merging 3 lots to create one.
So the land itself is leased land.
Correct.
Referred to the mortgage. Like the second question, if someone sell the property back.
Correct, yeah, so,
How do you price it?
yeah. Two good questions. So yeah, it's leased land. It's a 75-year renewing lease. So with each sale, the lease renews. We have first right of repurchase, and the town of Fairfield has the second right. So should for some reason Habitat Coastal not be able to or interested in exercising that right, the town of Fairfield can repurchase it to preserve it as affordable housing. But generally we, in our history, we buy back our homes should a family move on for whatever reason. Because again, we've upfront provided a pretty significant subsidy. So it's always best for us to buy back a unit, do a little improvement as necessary and resell it, preserve it for a home buyer. Yeah, so there's a calculation in the lease. This is one of these things where, there's a bunch of different calculations and none of them are quite perfect. So yeah, there's a calculation such that the intention is that the home buyer who's selling back the unit gets some of the equity out of their investment while living there, but still keeps it affordable for us. Yeah, and Housatonic has a,
Yeah, so the right of first refusal allows you to buy the property for market value, for what it would sell. We have to match the sale price in the market. It's that silent second mortgage that I spoke about, which comes into a play. So the silent second mortgage at the Housatonic model, it gets forgiven at a rate of 5% per year for 20 years. And we've had different versions of this as well, but the one that we're currently using forgives at 5% a year. So the family is building equity in the home. But if they've lived in the house for 10 years and let's say it was $100,000 silent second mortgage, they would get $50,000 in equity, and $50,000 in equity would come back to Housatonic.
So I understand the buyback, right of first refusal, but are you doing any deed restricting on these properties beyond that to make sure that they maintain their affordability over some time period?
yeah. Feel free to
Feel free to step in.
join in as well, Bruce.
Hi. So we have it as the renewable lease. So the lease itself, the ground lease, has all the restrictions for affordability. It can never be sold as anything but an affordable house. And the concept of renewing the lease every 75 years was if you bought the house, you stayed in there, at some point you'll sell, but we wanted to retain, like the 830G applications you all know so much about, have a 40-year, after 40 years, it goes away, right? The whole concept of this was to make it never go away. It would always be affordable until the town itself decided to not. If whoever, like the lender, say Habitat, decides not to reclaim it, and you choose not to reclaim it, it's still a lease, and they're buying the lease. So the town will forever be in control of that property. And so I work with a lot of towns, and one of the things we all found is the towns had a bunch of properties we foreclosed for taxes in 1956, and we don't even know we own them. And Public Works yells at us whenever the tree falls down and crashes on somebody's, shed, and we have to go replace the shed because the tree came up in a property we didn't know we owned. So the concept was for a town to go through, look at properties that you wouldn't normally do anything with, but the concept where the homeowner is going to pay taxes, but not on the land, because you can't tax the land because it's leased. They're going to pay it on the structure. So the town is still going to get income from the land that they didn't have with the land that they'd owned for taxes for all those years. So the concept is you'll get tax revenue, which is what you want. The homeowner gets a home, which is what they want. And we can all do it so that it's affordable going forward on the scale that everybody's looking at. So the whole idea was to make it, how do we get around the people coming in and doing 100 units, of which 10 are going to be affordable and you're going to like it? Well, the town of Fairfield wants to fix that. So they're coming in and going, how can we make it so that we're being proactive? So that when all these applications come in, you can say to everybody, but we're doing it. Other beauty of the whole thing is you give us a lot. Town, he gives us an acre. We go to them and say, how many houses do you want? Want 4? You want 8? The town in Fairfield is going to dictate what we're putting in there. You want townhouses, you want duplexes, you want a condo, you want a co-op, you want a PUD. Okay, because you're ultimately the landlord of the lease. So the concept for us at least was, as you see, we're working in partnership to say, well, what do you want? Do you want it to be a PUD? Or do we want to do a condo or maybe a co-op? We're trying to work through Mark's rolling his eyes back there. We're trying our best to come up with the best solution. So we have a bunch of people looking at it to try to say, what is it going to be that meets the town's needs for affordable housing and predictability in a particular lot, and make the habitat model work. If you sell a piece of property on the open market, the developer comes in, he builds what he builds, you have no say. That's what zoning says. Here, you're going to partner with Habitat to say, here's what I want. And the town actually gets revenue out of it. So the town's not getting totally, I don't want you to give me the lot. I don't want you to sell me the lot, because your taxpayers would have a fit, right? But if we get you the same tax revenue, aren't we going to sort of the same place? Did I answer the question like more than I needed?
Okay, second question. So on this Fairfield project, are you creating, this may be premature because I heard you say you still need zoning approvals, but are you creating a new zoning district, or is there an existing in order to get the density you need? Because it sounds like you're customizing it to this lot and this project.
Town of Fairfield's about to show up.
Okay, yeah, we'll tell you how it really is.
Yeah, right, thanks.
Good evening. Mark Barnhart. I'm the Director of Community Economic Development for the town of Fairfield. So with the Parkview Commons project, so first off, this is property that the town purchased from the U.S. government. It's old military housing. One of the first projects I actually worked on. So we purchased the property. It was already improved with single family homes. We subdivided the lot into 22 home ownership units. 4 other lots were carved out. We created some permanent supportive housing as part of those, and we added a couple lots for open space. Everything was fine and dandy until Superstorm Sandy hit. This happens to be in a very desirable neighborhood between the downtown and the beach district, but it's in a flood zone. And when the government built these houses back in the 1960s, they built them. They were great for elderly folks to live in, or as well as military personnel. But they were slab on grade construction, but they were at elevation 9.8. The flood elevation is 11. And so we needed to lift the homes up. So we began a process by which to make available an opportunity to buy back these units. When we subdivided them and sold them with restrictions in place as affordable home ownership units, there was a right of first refusal to repurchase the units when they were offered for sale. We also have a declaration of covenants in place to cap the resale so that they remain affordable. So over time, as individuals were interested in selling the homes, we stepped in and tried to acquire properties that were contiguous to one another. So we were somewhat successful. We got 3 properties that are contiguous, and then we have 2 across the street that are separated by a lot in between. When we did subdivide the property, we did create as many conforming duplex building lots as we could, anticipating that it might come a time where we wanted to redevelop the property and create more density there. So the 2 lots that are standalone by themselves are as of right duplex building lots. So we'll probably start there with Habitat. And then the other 3 parcels that are contiguous to another, we do have an option to do a design residence district overlay, a planned development of some sort to provide for increased density. And we're looking at that as an option. We haven't quite figured out the zoning yet as to how many units we want to do. It's partly, we're providing the land, as mentioned, in the form of a ground lease. So we're subsidizing, basically providing that land at no cost, $1 a year, 75-year ground lease. That would be assigned or sublet to the individual homeowners. But that's really the only way to make it affordable in Fairfield, is to basically purchase. When we talk to developers, one of the biggest issues is the cost of property. And so we've exhausted the supply of town-owned property at this point. So we're now actually using our housing trust fund to go out and find other property that is within our price range that we think makes sense. The one on Greenfield Street was an unusual situation where we had the individual actually come to the first select woman at the time and say, I'd like to buy town property next to mine. And she said, well, why do you want to do that? And I'd like to build a bigger house. And she said, well, how about if we buy your property instead? And he consented to that. And we reached an agreement and we purchased his property, added it to the parkland, which was next door. It was only being used as open space. And we created two conforming duplex building lots. The gentleman who has a rental property next door said, yeah, I've talked to him as well. And he said, well, I might be interested in selling my property as well, which is also backs up the town property. So we're now in conversations with him about purchasing his property, which would be a phase 3, I guess. We'll go from Greenfield to Parkview and then back to Greenfield Street. Home ownership is really a difficult thing to do unless the town is kind of in the deal somehow, basically providing that, providing the land at no cost, essentially subsidizing that, and then preserving it in perpetuity. And the trick is always in terms of how you craft the resale restrictions, because you do want to provide an opportunity for the homeowner to realize some of the upside equity and gain and appreciation through home ownership, give them a little bit of skin in the game. But you obviously have to put some curbs on that because otherwise it would no longer be affordable. So I hope that answers your question.
So I'm still trying to understand the reason for the leasehold. So you have a 75-year ground lease and then it's evergreen, right? So it gets renewed automatically, I guess, right? So that's essentially a conveyance. I know in Stanford and some other towns, the city will convey the land, but still they'll put restrictions on it. Usually it's 40 years, it's not in perpetuity. So they control, the marketability of the property. There'll be a silent second mortgage to control refinancing, that sort of thing. But why the leasehold? Couldn't you still just put covenants on it in perpetuity and just convey the land? And why did you keep the tether with the town?
You could, and I think it was only because I think the town, well, Habitat is a great organization. We've had nothing but a great relationship with them. We fully expect them to exist for a long period of time. I think nothing's more permanent than the town. So I think in a sense, the town viewed it as an additional mechanism, safeguard to ensure that it would remain in perpetuity as affordable.
Just control to keep your eye on it, really.
If I may, it also
Certainly could.
yeah, well, if I may, by renewing, yes, you could put it in, but all you need is some court deciding a rule against perpetuities, right? You can't convey in perpetuity. And but by a renewing lease, under ground leases are used all the time, the town also never leaves the discussion. The town will always be part of what happens to that land. This commission 50 years from now, if you conveyed it, don't have the same control as if you're the landlord and you put in there what restrictions you want. So, right, we hope Habitat will be here for a long time, but if it's not, the town, this commission becomes the person who decides what happens to that house going forward, so that the town never loses that control.
Yeah, I guess you'd have, the other side of it would be you'd have an affordability plan that sits on the land records and follows the units forever. And then you'd also have a set of covenants, which would be the same purpose. But I guess the town just wants to, keep a tether on and keep another set of eyes on it.
Well, and I think what Habitat is coming in to say is the town tells whoever's building the house what you want to see. If you prefer giving something like that, what Habitat's offering is to build on the land. How you control the land, how you convey the land would be 100% up to you. When Fairfield came to us with this idea, it was actually pretty novel because everybody always stayed involved. And so ultimately the town never lost control of it. And they'd have to invalidate every ground lease everywhere, and that's not going to happen. So It's just a matter of how you wanted to structure it. Just like when he came in with, I think we'll do duplexes here. Okay, we'll do duplexes. If you saw the one, we're trying to figure out how to make the 8-unit much more, appeasing. But the whole idea is to try to make the developer being Habitat is going to try its best to do what the town wants with the property. Because he's correct. If your average half an acre is $250,000 and we're selling for $250,000, by definition, we can never buy a lot and sell it for an affordable amount unless the lots is $1. But even then, we still got issues.
So circling over to the tax part of it again, the tax you're collecting from the homeowner, you're collecting on the assessed value of the home,
Of the improvements,
the improvements on the home, but not on the land
right?
itself.
Because you can't tax yourself.
That's probably part of it here, because like, again, this way the taxes are kept more affordable as well
Yeah.
for the homeowner,
More affordable for the home buyer.
right?
Oh, we have another situation. We have a ground lease and we have rent, which is taxes for their portion of the property. So it could be, there's many different ways to structure this. It creates all kinds of headaches for somebody like myself that has to administer about 5 or 6 different models across the town. So I guess that keeps me employed.
Well, as Mark pointed out, we're still working out the kinks. We've got lots of concepts, but he and his lawyer call me all the time because we're kind of going, well, what about this? And can we do this better? Put a couple of lawyers in a room will totally mess the whole thing up, right?
I believe I just heard rule against perpetuities again. That was like.
Sorry, you did remember it, right?
We don't have a residency requirement. Typically, we find for most of our both rental and ownership that there's some connection to the local community, that they've grown up there, they work here, they have family in the near area, but we don't have that as an imposition in terms of a requirement that they be resident.
Yeah, we do require that the home buyer live or work in the town of Fairfield. And there's a time period, I think it's 2 years prior to the purchase. So, that's specific to our Habitat affiliate, but.
That's the whole, but it works.
Right, yeah, I guess at that point, they're invested in Fairfield, right?
And Housatonic has a similar model. You have to either live or work inside of our service area in order to be, so it could be in a neighboring town that you live or work in, and then that would still be considered. But there are different models. If you look at Habitat International and what they're doing at our 1,500 affiliates, they have something called community land trusts. There's many different models that Habitats have been doing to make this same sort of thing work. And so I think there's ability to design a model that would be best just for New Canaan.
One of the homeowners.
Yeah, there's a lot of stability in it, and most of the individuals they couldn't afford a home in Fairfield were it not for these programs. I mean, we have people that they're all very gainfully employed. Gentleman that just comes to mind teaches at Fairfield University, is one of the units, has a disabled son, and this is really an opportunity for them to find an opportunity to buy a house in Fairfield. So most of the folks lived there for many, many years. Yep.
What about their house?
Really, we don't have any issues. They're part of the fabric of the community. And again, part of why we're trying to build as consistently as possible or in keeping with our existing zoning regulations is to be compatible with the neighboring structures and neighborhood as much as we can. So we're not trying to, certainly it would be a lot easier for us to maybe create more units that would help offset the cost associated with this, but that wasn't the point. We're trying to create lower density housing options that do fit within the neighborhood which they're situated.
Under the Housatonic plan, Is there an affordability plan that burns off after some period of time?
We have a model where we're going to sell to the homeowner who is within between 30 to 80% of the area median income. So we don't track their income if it goes up or down afterwards, so that there's nothing that holds them to that. But if they were to sell the property, we would have the right to purchase it back. Right now, we don't have any deed restriction on any of our properties, so that it has to remain affordable. But most of the time, we are buying those houses back because of our right of first refusal and keeping them in our portfolio.
So under that model, the buyer can really build equity, not only on the forgiveness on the phantom second, but also as the market goes up.
Right, right. They can build equity, which can be a benefit to the family as well. So.
And do these count as affordable units under the state's guidelines?
So you'll need to have either, you'll have to have a restrictive covenant in place in order to ensure that. So we do. And that was conscious because we do want to make sure that we got appropriate credit from the state for these units.
And is that for, so because we always seek moratoriums, so I'm not sure that necessarily applies to moratorium, just to your 10% number.
No, it would definitely apply
does.
to more moratorium points too. You know, ownership units aren't valued as highly as rental units. I'm sure you're familiar with that. But one of the beauties of actually working with Habitat too is that they do target ownership to very lower. I don't know of any other organization that can do home ownership units for folks below 80% AMI. We've struggled even at 80% AMI. So to have Habitat providing no interest mortgage financing and targeting folks at 60 and even lower than that AMI is really a benefit. So the Greenfield project, we asked if Habitat would be comfortable with restricting those to 60% AMI households, and that's what's restricted, and that's those will be the only 4 units in town that will be restricted to that income bracket.
I would just say that we coming forward to tell you, you tell us what you would want. This isn't Habitat telling you what's best for you. If this works out, you come to Habitat and say, I got an acre of land, what do you want to do with it? And so to his point, I don't want to tell you how much density. I don't want to tell you the roof colors. I don't want to tell you the AMI. You're in the driver's seat. And it's why the lease versus that. You start telling us what to do, not the other way around.
So you stand, if we were to say this is something we're interested in, where do you stand in terms of the two organizations working together? As I understand it, we're in the Housatonic catchment. But it's kind of unusual because you look at the map, it looks like we should be in Coastal's catchment. But also Coastal has more experience in their work with Fairfield on partnering with the town. Do you have anything similar during Housatonic's work?
No, we have not done a partnership with the town yet.
Okay.
We're definitely open to it. And I don't think we've figured out how we would work together just yet, but there is a history of habitats working together. So
I would say you come to us, we'll figure out a way to work together nicely.
Okay.
And they're very nice.
So, very simplistically, town finds the land. Very simplistically, the town finds the land and then works with you to provide criteria for what the town desires, and then you deliver on the construction and is that sort of bottom line?
Yeah, I'm sure you have a process that you'll have to follow here as well. In Fairfield, we had identified this parcel. We purchased it with the thought we would create some affordable home ownership or affordable housing on the site. Our preference was home ownership, so we did put out an RFQ. Habitat was among the organization that responded to that request. We went through a process to interview them, understand their organization better and what their plans were for the site. What could you do with this? It fit nicely with what our vision for the property was, and we selected them, entered into a development agreement, and then entered into a subsequent ground lease. And we're building it right now. So I'm sure you'll have to, the first part is identifying a piece of property that you think would be suitable.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes the hardest part, is finding a piece of property that either it's within in your asset, or you might be able to acquire it.
And you said you're using your Affordable Housing Trust Fund to acquire the property?
Yes, so we created a housing trust fund about 5-6 years ago, I guess, maybe a little longer now. And it's financed primarily through a supplemental fee, an inclusionary zoning fee that's attached to any new construction or building additions that don't otherwise provide any affordable housing. So that's generated enough income that we've been able to deploy that. And we've identified land acquisition as our biggest need. In talking to the development community, that's a big issue. So that was where we've used the monies to do that.
And who or what entity is acquiring the land? The town of Fairfield?
It's the town. We've talked about having a land trust, but in essence, the town is the land trust at this point. So that's partly why we own the property. We're deciding to lease the property. We're kind of holding it in trust, if you will. So that's our model, but there are many different models that you could deploy.
Last question. Do you have any trouble competing in the marketplace with non-public entities for the land? Like, are other bidders going up against you?
Yeah. Yeah, it's no accident. These are, we're paying a fair price for these parcels, but in the absence of, in the case of Greenfield Street, what makes this work is the town-owned property next door. Parkview was already a deed restricted affordable home ownership unit community that we had a right of first refusal to repurchase those. So we've exercised that. In the open marketplace, it's hard to find parcels. We're hopeful that, we're working with a couple property owners that we're talking with, but it's tough for sure.
Just didn't know if you had the special secret sauce on that yet.
I wish we did.
Anybody else? Well, thank you very much. It was
Thank you so much.
yeah,
So helpful.
incredibly informative. Appreciate it. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Rich, thanks for bringing this to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks to all of you.
Okay, item number 4, executive session, real estate negotiations. Scott Hobbs, Chairman, New Canaan Housing Authority. Do I have a motion to go into executive session? Do I have a second? Okay, thank you. All those in favor? Great. We'll be going into executive session. Would everybody kindly clear the room, for lack of a better way to put it? Not diplomatic.
Yeah,
but-
you get into executive session.
Yeah, Bob and I already, yeah. Scott, thank you for coming. Bob, you let us know when we're good to go.
At the law, middle housing is duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, townhouses, cottage clusters.
Yeah, so it's a.
So it's type of housing.
Not an income.
Well, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
I'm just saying what Maria
We're
was saying.
recording.
Good, good.
Applying it to this specific piece of property may not work because of the density.
Got it.
But other places, it's a good idea. Yeah.
Thanks again, Scott.
You did not make it easy.
No.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Scott.
We wouldn't get paid
so much if it were easy.
Okay, item 5, discussion of next steps for the affordable housing.
You're voting to come out of executive session?
Oh, can I have a motion to exit? Second? Okay, all
Second.
those in favor? Okay. Okay, item number 5, discussion of next steps for the Affordable Housing Committee, John Goodwin. I have a few thoughts. We can't discuss Avalon, obviously. But I can say, as he's walking out, is just huge kudos to Scott Hobbs, the chairman of the New Canaan Housing Authority. I can say for a fact that he's worked tirelessly on this probably for, I don't know, 5 months now. and continues to work tirelessly. So Scott, thank you very much. I also want to note that at my end, sorry for on my part through the past few months of lack of disclosure to this committee. I think, as some people had varying degrees of knowledge of what was going to Avalon and did not. And so, obviously, I had some knowledge of this to varying degrees. And so around the beginning of July, we had our July meeting. And frankly, I was already feeling pretty guilty. I'm a strong believer in the idea that we shouldn't be doing lots of work just to be wasting time.
I'll add my own mea culpa to that as well.
Yeah, Mike, you were worse than I was, I think.
It was the right thing, and I think it's for the good of the town in the end. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I think, again, as next steps is, see what everybody thinks, but I think we largely have to wait until we can publicly discuss what the landscape is in terms of future demand for affordable housing. And, that can only happen once, assuming the deal is closed, probably will be closed. And then I think we need to have a public discussion. Certainly, again, with Scott, I think we need to then, talk about where we think are next steps. I think we should at some point have a discussion with the Board of Selectmen as well as town council. I think what's going to be learned is the efforts to continue to create affordable housing in New Canaan will not be going away. And so that will continue. But at this point in time, I sort of, it's my gut, but anybody tell me if you disagree, that it's almost like replicating what was done in August and September was to say we need to sit tight, largely before we, explored next steps. I think some of the good positives, looking at you, Chris, is your finance committee. I think a lot of work has been done there. So I think,
There's a lot to do, and it's complicated.
Yeah. So any other thoughts? I think, we can assume that there will be an affordable house. I'm sorry.
I think, at some point, and it's going to be after things have settled there, we should have some kind of session for the public. Just to educate on what's happened, what's happening. Because I think even with the heightened interest in 830G, the general understanding is still quite low. And it is very complicated. And even on this committee, we get surprised at times by things. So the more we can educate the public, the more they're going to be on board with what we're doing, I think.
I think too, to piggyback on that, I think we'll have some clarity on the pending litigation in the next several months, handful of months. And so I think laying out the entire landscape at that point too. I don't know what will happen from there, if there will be appeals or what have you, but I think some things will become clearer, including this transaction.
I also think that we need to include the planning and zoning department more in our discussions. The background is they have not, and specifically Sarah Carey, the town planner, it was recommended when we first started this endeavor that, she was tied up with the POCD. She's tied up with some difficult applications, including the litigation. But the one thing that I do see is when you think about it, who have we had talk to this committee? It's been town planners from other towns. So I think going forward, I still feel strongly that ultimately affordable housing is land use. So I think we'll want to have her included much more than she has been in this discussion.
And I think P&Z, Krista, you correct me if
Right.
I'm wrong, they're gonna start looking at their regulations and maybe amending several of them. And so to the extent that we might want to have input on that as a committee, I think that's something we should consider.
Right.
Yeah, so the POCD, the Planning and Zoning Commission is meeting on Thursday to hopefully adopt the document, and then probably in the new year, we'll start talking about what we want to do with zoning reform.
So I think we could have a role there.
Well, I think, look, part of a lot of the potential solutions is the regulations.
Yeah.
You know, if you come up for solutions to motivate certain aspects, of affordable housing, ultimately, go beyond what's already been done. Even listening to the Habitat for Humanity, I mean, that brings in, planning and zoning aspect to it. So it's part and parcel in my view. Anybody else? Okay. Public comment. Bob, anybody on Zoom?
One person on Zoom, but they don't have their hand up.
Okay, great. Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
Okay, great. Have a great night, guys.
Thank you.
So I got it.
Bob, are we off?
And it's second. Come on.